Welcome, welcome, welcome to the I Have Something to Say show. 2 years ago today, I recorded my first video after I had my stroke. I posted it and I took 118 takes to say Happy Father's Day to my father 2 years ago. It was really, for me, it was the best video I have ever done because I wouldn't give up. And it was frustrating, but I turned that into fascination about getting it done. So I'm very thankful that I have something to say. Well, today I am so honored. I meet very few people that just stun me. When I talked to Sam Morris, I instantly recognized that this guy has something going on in a good way. He has deep thoughts, but he's intentional. He has a way of saying things that you absolutely hang on every word. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring my good friend. Hey, Sam.
Hey, Paul.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So, Sam, you know, I really am blessed that you decided to be on the show, and I can't wait for everybody that has aphasia, that has a stroke, that has been through so much. I have a lot of friends that are veterans that may be joining us or watching the broadcast. So tell me about Sam growing up.
Sam, growing up. So I grew up. Oh, I love that I can see the comments coming through. Hey,
Yes.
guys, nice to see you. Cool. I grew up on a blueberry farm, an organic blueberry farm in Maine. And so I had a peaceful, well, I mean, not entirely peaceful, but I think I was blessed to be surrounded by nature. Growing up on a 200-acre blueberry farm, had
Wow.
a lot of time to, just I think it really, really impacted the way that I live in the world and the way that I see the world these days. Because talk about a connection to nature. That happened from my early childhood. That was always a thing. And I think it affected me in so many ways, not only in terms of my appreciation for nature, my appreciation for the environment, but also just to have to have the experience that I think very few of us really have growing up these days, which is just a silence where we experience that sort of inner silence. And that inner silence really impacted a lot about the way that I see myself and see the world, and the way that I show up these days.
Yes.
So more about that later, but yeah.
So when you went to college, where did you go to school?
Yes, I started out at Berklee School of Music in Boston in 1994 when I was 18 years old. I was studying to be a professional guitar player. I still am a guitar player. Still am.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's something I continue to do these days, and
Good.
I always look for opportunities to play and to incorporate music in what I do, and I'm looking for more ways of doing that now. But I took some time off. I dropped out of Berklee. I realized that at that time a career based in music was just over my head. It was just more than I could handle at that time. So I took some time off. I did a semester with the National Outdoor Leadership School, and that was in 1996. That really changed my life. I gained a lot of perspective when I did National Outdoor Leadership School, and I started to develop my life around outdoor leadership at that time. And then I went back to school at Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts. So that was, and I see your next question is how did I get involved in cycling? So I'll just go straight into
Okay.
that because my training in outdoor leadership naturally brought me into my interest I saw a classified ad for a cycling adventure company doing cycling camping, and where it was a camping group for teenagers specifically focused around bike touring. And so in the summer of 1998, I led a group of seventh graders around Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard. Then I led a group of eighth graders from Stowe, Vermont to Portland, Maine. And then I had a lot of fun doing it. It was a really great experience. And so the following summer, while I was still in college, the following summer, I went back to the cycling tour company, and 2 weeks before the trips all began, I thought that I was going to be leading a trip from Amsterdam to Paris, and I thought, oh, that's a breeze, you know. I'll get to practice my French. I'll go to museums. It's nice and flat. I'll see the windmills. Yeah, that sounds great. You know, what a breeze. And then the camp director calls me into his office and he says, "Sam, I got a problem." He says, I need a leader for the cross country trip, and would you be willing to do that?" And I was like, if there's any time that I'm going to cycle across the U.S., you know, I might as well
Wow.
I might as well do it. So that summer of 1999, I ended up cycling 3,800 miles in less than 2 months, and we camped every night. We cooked all our own food, and it was a pretty extraordinary journey.
You know
So
what? You know, that sounds amazing. It sounds exhausting.
yes, yes.
But let me say hi to all these friends. Hey, Kathy and Laura and Heidi and Carla and Paul and Virginia and Bo. We welcome you, but I need to get on because we have so much to cover. Thank you. So tell me about November the 9th.
So November 9th, 1999. So I had just finished the cycling track across the U.S. in August of 1999. I was 23 years old at the time. And on November 3rd of 1999, I turned 24 years old. And then just about a week later, on November 9th of 1999, I was celebrating one of my best friend's birthdays. And so we went out together to go to a bar, and he had an acquaintance of his who was driving the car. And I'd never met the guy before. I didn't realize that the guy had been drinking. Didn't know anything about it, just kind of trusted. You know, I didn't even think twice about it. Just hopped in the back seat of the car. Next thing I know, we're tearing off down the road in this 1973 Chevy Nova, and he's going way too fast. There's no seatbelt in the back, and I'm thinking, oh no, I've just got this gut feeling, and I'm yelling up to the front. I'm like, we should pull over. We should go to this place close by. We should go to this place. You know, I'm because I don't feel good about what is going to happen. I don't. It's one of those situations where, you know, I definitely felt unsafe. Well, I felt unsafe for a reason because we turned from the paved road, we turned onto suddenly that asphalt road turned into a dirt road in the country. This is Western Massachusetts. Right after it turned into a gravel road, there was a couple of tight hairpin turns. We hit those hairpin turns going way too fast. So he lost control of the car and he fishtailed, went off the road, and we hit a tree. And my body, because there was no seatbelt in the back seat, it flew across the back seat, slammed into the passenger side or into the driver's side where the impact happened, and just boom, just like that. Without any loss of consciousness, nothing. I was awake for the whole thing.
Did you know
Suddenly,
you
I
were
was
paralyzed?
yes, I knew immediately that I was paralyzed from the waist down. Yeah, I slumped back into the middle of the seat, and I thought, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And
Mm.
interestingly enough, just a few weeks before that, I had just been trained as a wilderness first responder. And so I had actually been in the process of I was trained to take people who had become paralyzed in the wilderness and put them on backboards and take them out of the wilderness situation that they were in. Never did it for a moment did I think that would actually be me. And so I'm lying in the back of this car, can't feel a thing below my waist. And my friend turns around from the front seat, says, "Is everyone okay?" And I as I was gaining my breath back, I said, "No, no, 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 I'm not okay. I'm paralyzed." And so, yeah, it was, for a lot of the people who are on this call. I know a lot of people are suffering from aphasia and have had strokes and so forth. That sort of dissociation that you have. I was dissociated in a way, like almost like this experience is so intense that there's no emotions to describe it. And I see your next question is what the first week in the hospital, what were my thoughts? Well, after going through the most intensely emotionally painful night of going to the hospital and calling my parents and telling them what had happened and so forth, and just trying to come to terms with, oh my God. Well, suddenly from that point on, I started getting morphine pumped into me. And so all of that started to numb out. And so friends and family would come to and go to the hospital. And I was just lying there in a morphine daze. And I thought that I was actually doing pretty good. I thought, okay, I must be adjusting to this pretty well. Well, little did I know that was because of the morphine that I was on. Yeah.
So you told me about the spiritual awakening.
So the spiritual awakening happened the night that they took me off morphine. I was 7 days in, and I had been pumped with morphine that entire week. And so, like I said, I thought, yeah, I'm seeing to be doing pretty good. Well, yeah, of course, anyone who's on morphine thinks that they're doing pretty good no matter what's happening.
Yes.
So the doctors take me off morphine a week after my spinal fusion surgery. I'm lying there in this hospital bed alone at night. My lower body is paralyzed. My upper body is held firm in a hard shell plastic cast about 3/4 of an inch thick, just like keeping my whole torso from moving so that my spine could heal from the surgery. So the only thing I can move are my hands and my neck, and that's it. And I'm in this hospital bed with no morphine. Suddenly, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot go on like this. I became lucid, for the first time since the night of the accident. I was actually thinking clearly, and I thought, there's no way. I can't live paralyzed. My whole life revolves around the use of my legs. Not to mention everything else below the waist, as I'm sure your audience can decipher from what I'm saying. Like everything below the waist was gone for me. And so I thought, I cannot live like this. I just can't. That was one of those things that is just it's like it's non-negotiable,
Right.
And so if I'd had a sharp object close by, I don't know if I'd be talking to you right now.
We have a similar story. I couldn't talk. Talked all my life. Speaker, writer.
Yeah. The
I
thing
said,
that you had.
I'm telling you, my identity was tied to the ability to speak.
Yeah. So you have a total parallel story. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? How that it's so strange and bizarre how that happens, and I think that can happen with a lot of people. That very thing that they are most tied to can sometimes be the thing that gets taken away. I have another story I'll share at some point with you about a writer who is a good friend of mine who is having has a brain tumor right in his place where it will affect his ability to write. But anyway, so that night, the only thing I could think to do was to take breaths as deep as I possibly could. Just breathe as deeply as I could. Something told me, I was thinking about yoga and how I had recently been practicing yoga. And I thought, well, why am I even thinking about yoga right now? Like, why am I thinking, like, I can't do yoga. I'm lying in this bed. And then I had this thought. It was like this sort of divinely inspired thought. And I don't even know where it came from, but it said the most important part of yoga is the focus on the breath, and you can still breathe. And so I thought, okay, well, yes, that's true. I can still breathe. And so I started taking these deep breaths, and I started breathing as deeply as I possibly could. Deep, deep breaths. And then suddenly, I mean, the most unexplainable experience happened. Just like this. Boom. Everything that I was thinking about, everything that I was worrying about, everything was gone. All the content of my brain that I was normally accustomed to was gone.
Wow.
I couldn't worry if I tried because it wasn't there. And I became pure awareness, just awareness with no identity, no ego, no identity, no sense of Sam, no sense of Sam's body. And as that happened, I also felt completely merged with breath. I couldn't even feel my inhale or my exhale happening anymore because that was related to my body and I wasn't my body anymore. I just became pure breath. And when that happened, I heard this clear message: breath is spirit. And it was just so clear, and I was having the experience of it, and I realized that I became pure eternal spirit. And I was looking from the perspective of my higher awareness, which is eternal. I was looking at a temporary body and a temporary identity called Sam that lives in this world in the modern age, but that it was all temporary. And my awareness became the non-temporary. And I saw that who I actually was not temporary like my body and my mind was. And I went,
Exactly.
I was like, what the hell is going on here?
So how this thing happened, and I know mindset is everything for a person with aphasia.
Yes.
Really, people with aphasia, Tom Broussard joins us. He knows how important mindset is and practice is. But how would you tell somebody to reset their mind to the proper channels in life? And so,
yes, so that's a great question. That's a great question. So for me, the most powerful part of all of this, obviously I can't live in that eternal experience all the time. It can't always be that eternal awareness. That was something that just happened because basically God just put his hands or its hands or whatever on me and was like, boom, you aren't your body. You aren't your mind. Boom. It was like, whoa. But of course, then I return to normal life and I have to live a normal life from that point on and have, the experience of going through life and all of the things that one thinks about, all the things that one ruminates upon. I have I have experience of procrastination. I have experience of worry, all those things that we all experience as human beings. However, what I do is I just keep practicing every day, observing my thoughts, observing my breath, observing my body from a neutral perspective. So essentially, when you practice meditation, you start to realize that our thoughts and our feelings, it's like we are projecting an image of our reality. If you think of the analogy of a movie theater, okay? If you are looking at the movie that's projected on the screen and you're going through that movie, you get so lost in that world because, like, imagine a movie where all of your senses are completely involved. where all of your touching senses are, your tactile senses, your hearing senses, your visual senses, where everything was involved, you wouldn't realize you were watching a movie. You would think that this was reality because all of your senses are involved. I mean, we can get lost in a movie just watching it and
Right.
just hearing it, but we still know that we're in a movie theater. But if all of our senses are completely involved, then we don't realize that what's being projected is a movie. So what's actually being projected out of our minds is essentially a movie of our life. It's we're going through thinking this is reality, when what is actually happening is we're projecting from our imagination and from our history what we see, and that becomes the movie of our life. But through meditation, what you realize is that you aren't the content of the movie, that you're actually the projector.
Ah,
And so you realize, oh, okay, I don't have to believe all of the things happening in the movie of my life, because that's just the movie that my mind projects. I can see that I am the light projecting the story, that I am not actually the content of the movie. And by doing so, I realize that gives me the freedom to shape that narrative the way that I want to. And
so
that's
you
my
can chart your own destiny by
exact
yes, yeah.
exactly. Then you can be the movie director, and you can say, rather than being the one who is always the central character in one's own movie, one can actually be the director and say, okay, I'm choosing something different for this character right now. I don't so when we get lost in emotion is when we get lost thinking that we are only the character in the movie that's projected by our minds.
We have a scheduled section Wednesday for you to help me learn how to breathe.
Yes.
Let me, you're known as an expert on breath work.
Yes.
People pay you a lot of money to consult with them because you have been able to help. What kind of thing, what can a person that has aphasia, has a stroke, learn about breath work?
Okay, so first of all, let's look at what the breath actually is and what the breath represents, both on a physical level and on a metaphysical level, meaning, and from metaphysical meaning, basically it's divine relationship. So I want to look at it from two perspectives, the physical and the metaphysical.
Okay.
From the metaphysical, we talk about the term inspiration. Well, what is inspiration? Inspiration comes from in spirit. Now, in spirit, and when we think about breath, we think about inspiring. So we are essentially taking in spirit when we are breathing. There's a reason why that word is connected both at the level of the physical breathing and the level of the spiritual. We are inspiring, we are taking in our own spirit when we are breathing. And like I said, when I had that experience, it became absolute crystal clear to me, as clear as day, that breath is spirit. Breath is spirit in embodied form. So when we are breathing, we are actually breathing in and out spirit. We are connecting to something that's inside of us and much, much, much larger than us, too. And it's also the thing that connects us all. If you and I are in the same room together, what are we sharing? Aside from our physical presence being with each other, we're also sharing the same breath. So our spirits are connected through the breath that we are sharing together. And now during COVID times, it's even more obvious that we're sharing breath with each other because we're using these masks to try to prevent our breath from reaching each other. But this is the beauty of this connection, is we are actually breathing in and out spirit with each other. So it's something that we experience inside of ourselves, and it's something that is happening all around us all the time. Every single animal is a breathing being. So it's something common to all forms. It's the first thing that we do when we are born. It's the last thing that we do when we die. We are breathing animals. That is, we are inspired from the moment of birth to the moment we die.
Wow.
Now, on a physical level, what conscious breathing does, now there's a difference between just breathing and what is known as conscious breathing. Conscious breathing is using not only a variety of different modalities to make the breath, to change up the dynamics of the breath inside of us to achieve different results, but it also is a way, simply by putting your awareness on your breath, it actually reactivates to the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is the part of the nervous system that's responsible for all of your automatic functioning, all of the things that you don't have to think about. So when someone says, take a deep breath, you're stressed out, and they say, take a deep breath. Well, what we intuitively know by saying, take a deep breath, is that the breath will engage the parasympathetic nervous system. It automatically calms down the system. It takes your brain from going in a reactive state, a sympathetic nervous system response, reacting to the environment around you, and it brings you into a more calm and centered place inside of you. So by practicing, I don't say take one deep breath, I say breathe all day long, as much as you possibly can.
Really?
So I show up. I do a breath work practice where I focus my time on my breath, but also I breathe consciously all day long. So right now, as I'm talking to you, there's part of me that is focused on our conversation. There is another part of me that's focused on the quality of my breath as it moves in and out of my body. So I've trained myself to be aware, to track the sensation of breath moving in and out of my body, so that I don't actually have to go into that reactive place. And so that I can be in the present moment.
Exactly.
Now, when you think about it, breath is really the only experience. Breath and sensation in our body is the only thing that we can experience that is truly present, because our minds are constantly referencing the past and future. Our minds are constantly looking
Can
at the past.
I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Naomi said that is what strokes and trauma have taken away from Gene, the ease of breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give any, people that have strokes and they have aphasia, I can tell I didn't breathe at all. I would find it hard to breathe. It's just overwhelming. And I got back to it about a year later. I realized I wasn't breathing at all. Really.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
did you start?
So I started. So this has taken a lot of practice, a lot of training, a lot of reminders. Like I tell my clients, put post-it notes all over your house. Breathe, 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 breathe.
Wow. See, that's what I
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah. The more you can remind yourself of it, the better. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be easy. I want to say that. Nothing in my life has been easy. That's for sure. I show up every day to incredibly challenging circumstances with my paralysis, plus all the other stuff that any human being has to deal with in the world. I have to deal with all that stuff in addition to having my paralysis. So I'm not going to say that it's necessarily easy. What we do need to do is remind ourselves of it. Where there can be ease is if we remind ourselves we don't necessarily have to breathe in any sort of specific way. Now, there are all of these great modalities for breathing that you can find in yoga and meditation practices that are actually they will help to cultivate a certain mindset. But just simply noticing the sensation, it doesn't take anything to just bring your awareness to the sensation of breath. We're always experiencing sensation of breath. What we don't tend to notice, because we tend to live in our thoughts a lot, is we tend to be cut off from the sensation of breath. But as soon as I ask anyone on this call right now to simply notice the sensation of your breath, notice the cool air entering through your nose or your mouth, notice it as it starts to go down your throat and then into your lungs and into your body. You can, it doesn't take anything to notice the sensation.
Yep.
It's just directing your awareness to that sensation. And so by directing your awareness to that sensation, what then begins to happen is you start to, naturally your breath starts to expand because it wants to expand. Your body wants to breathe more. And it's not about going, okay, I better breathe deeply for a while. That's silly.
Yeah.
It's instead noticing and being respectful of your body, being respectful of exactly where you are without needing to change anything. See, a lot of people go into, oh, I need to fix this. I need to change this. I need to do something about this. No, be loving with yourself. Be kind with yourself.
Wow.
Simply notice the sensation. Just once you notice that sensation, then your breath says, oh, that feels good. You start to feel, oh, that feels good. That feels good. You know, and then you go, oh, what would it feel like to breathe just a little bit more? Sooner or later, you start to notice, I'm actually breathing a lot deeper than I was just a moment ago, simply by noticing it.
That makes so much sense. When I had my stroke and I had aphasia, I went to a rehab clinic here in St. Pete, and I surrounded myself with words. I put it on the wall. Learn a word. I would practice it all the time. I was surrounded by words. That's all I thought about. It would have been helpful if I put breathe, breathe, breathe on the words.
Yeah, well, it's never too late. It's never too late. Hey, Paul, give me 1 second. I'm going to put a charger to get on my computer here because the battery's running low.
Okay. So, hello, everybody. Hi, Chrissy. Hi, Naomi. Hi, Brooke. Hey, Tom. Hey, Salad. Hey, Serena. Oh, Kayla's on the call. So, thank
hello,
you
everybody.
for joining.
I'm glad to be able to be here with you this morning, having coffee with you and Paul. Paul and I are using the exact same coffee cup.
Look. Yes, sir.
Look at this.
You know, I have a saying that's called, we all have a ghost.
Yes.
And the little ghost sits on your left shoulder, and they have one goal only: to destroy your thoughts, destroy what you want. And I think you called it something else. So I'm from Louisiana. I'm not educated, so I call it what do you call it? Default mode network.
Oh, well, okay. That might be a little bit of an oversimplification, but yeah, we'll go with that, and I'll talk about that. So the default mode network in our brain is actually it's designed to be helpful. Actually, it's the default mode network is it's like where it's sort of the memory banks of our brains. And I'm not a neurologist, so forgive me if some of this is a little bit inaccurate. But essentially, it's like the memory banks of our brain that is constantly working. It's constantly, it's analyzing our surroundings. It's creating a map of our environment. It's remembering things that we need to remember, and it's taking those memories and it's trying to apply them to situations to be able to handle things in the future.
Like a file cabinet.
Yeah, it's like a file cabinet, exactly. It's all these files just kind of in the brain. So without it, we wouldn't be able to function in the world. It would be a non-starter. We need to be able to have access to these files and access to these memories to be able to work with the world, to be able to navigate the world effectively. However, it also is when we are, in a quiet space, when we hear the rumination of thoughts going on in our heads, that is the default mode now at work. We
I
are
got it.
when we tend to stop, and we are, especially if you stop and you're doing nothing. And this is why it's very challenging for a lot of people to do nothing. They always need to be doing something, distracting themselves, and they think, well, I can't even sit still for a moment. This is one of the big challenges with people with meditation, because they sit still and it's like, oh, wow, this is driving me crazy. Well,
Yep.
it's driving you crazy because you're here, you're actually
I
you're
struggle
more
with that.
attentive to all the stuff that tends to go on in the brain all the time. And it's like, normally people are in the habit of distracting themselves from all of that stuff going on in the brain. But when you stop and you just sit, it's like, well, it seems nonstop. And so a lot of people avoid meditation simply because they can't stand sitting with themselves and noticing all of that stuff going on in the brain. And
Hey,
so,
Sam, can you hold your cup up?
yes,
Hold it up.
yeah, oh,
Somebody wants to take a picture.
I love it.
I hope you got it, Tom. Okay.
All
So
right.
when it comes to the value of meditation and breath work, you had a little stage by stage. What do you mean, give it time?
Okay, so like I said, most people, when they start meditating, they say, I can't do this. I can't sit still and not have any thoughts. This just seems impossible. Well, you know, let's look at it this way. If you've never meditated before, how can you expect to be good at it right away?
Exactly.
You know, it's like if I've never thrown foul shots before, I don't go and start to take on, best NBA players out there. I would have to go and show up at that court and practice foul shots day after day after day after day. And the same thing is true for meditation. So when most people start meditating, they're like, still got all these thoughts in my head. I guess I'm no good at it. And it's like, of course you're no good at it. You just started, you know? So, and then they think that, I see you put up relax. Yeah. So initially, the value of meditation, a lot of people think, well, I should do it because it will help me to relax. Well, that is true. That when you can persist through, and you can allow those thoughts to be there, and not try to make them go away. By trying to make them go away, you're still doing your habitual thing of trying to make something different.
That's
But if you just
really,
let them be there, you just let the thoughts be there, let the feelings be there, and you just notice them,
huh.
then you start to learn how to relax around the thoughts that are always occurring inside your brain. And it's like, okay, I can handle all this stuff going on. I don't necessarily need to get stressed out by it. I can handle it. I can notice it happening, but not get involved with it. So then I start to be able to relax more. But that's just stage two. When you get beyond that, you start to realize that, like I was saying earlier, that who you really are is not the content of those thoughts.
Hmm.
And what the biggest trick, the biggest deception that we are all experiencing as human beings is thinking that we are the content of the thoughts that we are experiencing.
Wow.
Thinking that who we are is the image of ourselves that our brain creates. But when you practice meditation long enough, you see, oh, okay, my brain is creating an image of myself, but there's also something that's observing that happening. Now, what is that is observing that happening? Oh, that's who I really am, is that which observes the imagination creating my reality. Then I can really relax even more, because I realize that no matter how much I think, I am not going to be the image of myself that my thoughts are creating. And so my mind might keep on going on and doing its thing, but I don't have to pay attention to
Can
it.
ask a question? Why
Yeah.
is it so hard? I have my own thoughts. I've written books about this. Why is it so hard to stick to the process, to the routine, and till it becomes a habit? One other thing, we'll check on this. I don't know if you can get captions on the screen, but I'll check on it for the next show. But why is it people tend to start, stop all their life?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, any new habit is incredibly hard to form for most people. And the reason why, there's a lot of reasons why. And a lot of that is that we don't realize how conditioned by habits we already are. So, in order to create a new habit, you actually have to stop an old habit. And so that is
Replace it.
challenging because when you think about it, what we really are is a whole bunch of habits. Like 95% of our brains are unconscious. That means that we are living 95% from habits and only 5% conscious awareness. So 95, the vast majority, and some people even think 97%, the vast majority of our cognitive function is habitual. So in order to create a new habit, I'm going to have to break some old habit. But habits are really hard to break.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm meditating and say I'm new to meditation and something is saying, when is this going to be over? When is this going to be over? What do I need? I need to pee. I need to eat something. I need to be doing something right now. I need to this. I need to that. And I don't have time for this. That's just the old habits telling you that you need to always be on the go, always be doing something else, always be sort of not in the present
Well,
moment, but
good
always be
habits,
going.
bad habits, you're the prisoner of both, one way or the other.
Exactly. So the key to doing this and doing this effectively is sticking with it, staying present and sticking with it and continuing. So just like anything, it's like
How about
when
that?
when when you are lifting weights, the 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 only time your muscles are actually growing are when you want to stop. That's the only time your muscles actually grow when you're lifting weights. Is that last couple of reps where you're like, ugh, it's so hard. That's the only time that the
Really?
muscle is actually growing when you're lifting weights. And so, in the same way, when you are meditating and you're like, God, it's so hard to stay here. I don't want to do this. And you tell your mind, stay. Just like you tell an animal, or just like you tell a dog, stay. That, by doing that over and over and over again, you practice putting your mind where it needs to be. Basically saying, I call it mind over mind, not just mind over matter, mind over mind.
Wow.
Then it's like, okay, no, you stay right here, right now. And the more you do that, the more you start to notice in every moment, you actually have the ability to
Wow.
control your own mind and say, okay, no, you're not going there. You're staying here. You're staying here with Paul right now. Stay here with Paul. Stay here with Paul. So the more I do that, the more my mind starts to calm down. It's like, oh, someone's in charge. Just like an animal will start to calm down when there's an alpha around, and it goes, okay, someone's in charge, so I feel more secure. Our own minds will calm down when we say no, stay, and then it's like, okay, now there's someone in charge of all of this stuff going on, and then when it feels that there's someone in charge, then all of that thinking can be used as a beautiful experience, because now you can use it effectively to strategize, to say, okay, how do I want to live from my heart, and use my mind to be able to strategize in the world the practical things that will allow me to live from my heart, rather than living from my mind and having that be my default.
Yep.
Instead, I want to show up passionately. I want to show up inspired. I want to show up present and calm, just like Cheng Kim Chu. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Just said on the
Chat.
chat. Yeah. I want to stay. I want to be present. I want to be inspired. I want to be connected. I want to be effective. What a lot of people don't realize is that the fatigue that they feel at the end of the day isn't actually a physical fatigue. It's fatigue from thinking, using this stuff in a way that's not actually serving us all day long.
Exactly.
Of course we're tired. We're tired of hearing this crap. We have to go to sleep because we're tired of hearing this crap.
Tired of me.
Yeah, exactly.
So we talked about, when I taught my workshops for years, I had a sign in the back of the room that was there for me. My students thought it was there for them, but it wasn't. It said, check your ego at the door. I don't think it's a good plan to edge God out. Yeah. So I did it for me. I just wanted to be present, intentional, authentic, and genuine, and say to everybody in the room, I'm the most flawed person in the room, and that's to your benefit because I'm not scared to share my flaws.
Yeah.
That made me a good teacher.
Yeah.
Because I had the common sense to let the student become the teacher.
Yeah.
Transfer that. So what ego, intention, and soul, how does that all play in Sam's world?
Yeah. Great question. So ego I see as being, it's an interesting topic. It's a poorly understood word, but I see ego as being it's like a little kid that doesn't trust that there's something bigger that's protecting it. So it's like the little kid inside of us that wants to prove itself, that wants to, that focuses on pure individual interests, that's driven purely by its own sort of self-centered motives and so forth, and it's disconnected from other people. The nature of ego is to separate. And there is technically a separation between us, but the ego focuses on that separation. It's trying to one up others. It's trying to, it's trying to, it has that sort of childlike approach to life where it's like an underdeveloped mind, essentially. Now, I will never return to ego-based thinking because I realize that there's so much more to life by surrendering the need to prove myself and realizing that my value is inherent, my value is divine, just like your value is inherent, your value is divine. We are already everything that God intended us to be. We do not need to focus on the separation between us in order to prove something individually, in order to make more money or have more status or whatever. That actually puts a lot of unnecessary constraint on the system, and it might feel good for someone who has an underdeveloped mind to sort of feel like they are sort of proving themselves, and but it's not lasting. It's not sustainable. All those things that someone might gather through an ego-based approach to life, none of them can be held on to, and none of them have a greater. You can't play in a bigger field. Now, when I let go of the ego, now I can play in a much bigger field. When I surrender to that I am living from a place of surrender and living from a place of the divine will, and I ask from my heart, how is it that I want to show up lovingly and of service today? Then I naturally get opportunities. I mean, there's no way you and I would even be talking if it wasn't for the
Exactly.
fact that I show up going, how can I show up lovingly and of service? Now, this is actually that intention to do so is creating this conversation. That's, I have no ego invested in this conversation. This was simply a result of, you and I each individually asking God, asking our heart,
Exactly.
whatever you want to call it, asking how can we show up and be of service. And by doing so, this opportunity arose from that. And now this is having a ripple effect on your community. It's having a ripple effect on my community. But it comes from a place of being connected to the soul and the way in which there's a divine orchestration that is occurring at all times that we cannot predict. Just a few weeks ago, I could not have predicted meeting you, and yet it is happening now. And so that divine orchestration is only able to happen at a soul level. It cannot happen at an ego level.
So when you say soul,
Mm-hmm.
are you saying that everything is connected by soul, breath work, breathe in, breathe out? It's all, I just want to understand.
Yes. Yes. When I say soul, what I mean is we have what I would describe as individual souls, but the souls are in relationship with each other and in relationship with the planet and in relationship with the cosmos. That all of there's an energetic network between us that is always orchestrating events that allow for the growth and development and evolution of the soul's consciousness that we all share together.
What?
And
Yeah,
that
we
is
are one. Yeah, like
we are one, exactly. We are part of the same, if you want to look at it as the oversoul, the thing that is the collective consciousness that is far greater than what our logical minds can possibly understand, but that is a participatory. If you think about the way that you can connect to certain music and you can say, wow, that music really has soul
right.
and it speaks to me. Like, what are we actually talking about when we say that music has soul and it speaks to me? Well, what we're actually talking about is there's something common that we share with the musician or the spirit of the music that created that music. We can feel it inside of us as well. So it's not simply, we can hear the difference between someone who just has a individual ego-based interest in trying to, be a musician, which to me sounds shallow, and something that has soul, which feels like, oh, that could have come from me. I feel that inside of me
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
Sam, you have a great interest in the veterans,
Mm-hmm.
in the way they come back from war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you've done a lot of work. Why do they struggle with suicide so much? We need to do something about that.
Absolutely, and we are hard at work on that with the project that you and I have been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of reasons, not the least of which is the way in which veterans, when they go through boot camp, when they are trained and conditioned to show up to be to serve the country, they're trained to basically lose their own
Disassociate.
sense of personal value, to show up to serve in this way that makes them warriors, to basically let go of their own sense of self
Mm-hmm.
and just show up and be warriors. Now they're very young when that happens. They are at a stage of their personal development as human beings where their prefrontal cortex, their sense of self, hasn't even been fully developed. The prefrontal cortex won't even fully develop until you're 25, 26 years old, especially in males. And so before that sense of self has even been fully developed, they're already being conditioned to not think about themselves as valuable human beings and to instead think of themselves as being purely there to serve some interest that is outside of them and to be warriors. Now, also, there's a number of other layers that exist there too. There's a camaraderie that happens with soldiers on the battlefield where they are protecting. They're living in such a way every day where they are there to protect each other and bond with each other to create that cohesive group. And in a lot of ways, that there's something very beautiful about that fraternal bond that gets connected with them. But when they return home to civilian life, they've been conditioned to not appreciate their own personal value. B, none of that fraternal brotherhood is there. They are, all of that is taken away. They return to this civilian world that they haven't been trained to be able to evolve around, and they feel really. And then C, you add the trauma from that they have to experience from going through war, and so you have a perfect storm for people feeling helpless in
You know what?
society as civilians.
I think we ought to do an entire show, whether your show or my show, about that.
Yes.
If you had to sit down with a teenager, just take 1 minute and share the greatest thing you've ever learned in your lifetime. 1 minute, go.
Yeah, well, I think it's related a lot to what we were just talking about the fact that who you really are is of infinite value and is not related to the projection that your mind creates about who you think you are. That who you really are is infinitely connected. It's connected to all other people. It's connected to nature itself. It's connected to God. It's in a perfect synergistic relationship with all things. When you realize that, you could, by someone realizing that early on, they could learn the value of surrender early on. And when I say surrender, I mean the opposite of giving up. I mean letting go of the need to prove oneself in any kind of way, and instead participate in a loving, harmonious way with other people and with the divine.
Great.
And that there's an infinite amount of value that you can offer the world and receive from the world by doing so.
Fill in the blank. It's never too late to
breathe. It's never too late to breathe.
It's never too late to breathe.
We have at our fingertips. It's literally right under our nose at all times. When I first recognized the power of breath, I thought, oh my gosh, this has literally been right under my nose the whole time. Now I need to take what's right under my nose and I need to start feeling it in my body. And when I start to feel it in my body, my nervous system, by doing so day in and day out, as much as I can, my nervous system starts to change.
Wow.
Automatically. It starts to integrate. It starts to let go, and it starts to actually be able to show up in a much more powerful way.
Well, thanks, Sam. And I promise you I get you out on time. Thanks for all the listeners. We appreciate your feedback. And more than you know, it humbles me that you came and joined me. Until next Monday, as I always say, be blessed.
Be blessed.
Add to that and breathe. And may the speech be with you, because you never know when you're going to wake up and not be able to talk. Next week, I'm proud to announce that Dr. Tom Broussard is going to join me and discuss his book, The ABCs of Aphasia. I can't wait. Live at level 10 every day, every time, without fail, no exceptions. Sam, what do you?
Hope is on the way.
It is. Hope is on the way. You have a nice day and stay blessed. See you next week on the show. Bye.
Lots of love, folks.